welcome back. I'm going to show a couple of orc weaponry. Because it came with so many. It was unbelievable. But there were some bigger ones that looked really cool. I like these little rockets.
That's so cool.
This is the one that's displayed on the box with the model I'm using. It's pretty cool, but it closes off so much of the body. Like if I put that in front.
Look at that belt, and it's got a flamer on it as well.
Yeah, it was really. I wanted to make this one, but it didn't work out. Then we've got a mini nuke. I don't know. We've got plenty of big old silly axes, and love those. You can see I've not quite cleaned everything off, but you know.
God, I love the orc aesthetic of weapons.
These two are still on there, and then my orc box is a little bit of a stretch. Hang on. Oops. Well, okay. This is my little orc supply.
Where do orcs come from, guys? Tiny plastic containers.
When a mummy and a daddy buy plastic figurines. So we've got the different groups. What are they called? What are they called?
Parts?
When they have the moon.
Gubbins?
They're the goth people.
Oh, the clans.
Clans!
Yeah, there we go.
We have different clan sigils. I can't see. The different bodies, different fronts of bodies, like shoulder pads, different heads they could have attached. So they could have like an exhaust piece. I don't freaking know. That one just has a helmet on. Not that you can see. But yeah, it came with so many pieces that I was quite stressed out, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's around about the time Tash messaged me and said, I hate this, I hate orcs, they're the worst.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't say they were the worst. That is still reserved for bitch.
The Eldar already had a rough time of it, didn't they? Not only did their entire race almost get destroyed, and they were also kind of an endangered species, but Tash hates them the most out of everything she's painted.
What? Yeah, I do. What's my next color? I'm like, have I painted everything for that? No. Okay. Carrying on.
So
more colors? Is that what we're talking about?
No, we're kind of done with colors, I think.
Okay.
Now. The colors are really cool, but there's not like a super load of depth to them or anything, you know?
Just is what it is. Okay.
Yeah. We're actually going to go into the Emperor of Mankind. Not really, but essentially, when the Emperor embarked on the Great Crusade. So we've talked about this a few times, right? Where essentially it's like the Emperor, the Age of Strife, when he took over the Terror, and you kind of unified it, and then he went out on the Great Crusade to kind of like reclaim humanity, the planets, the galaxy almost. And then, you know, like he kind of formed the Imperium through that, and, you know, essentially during this time, they obviously re-encountered the orcs.
And how did that go for them?
Well, so the orcs, and this is a good moment to talk about this, really. The orcs are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that they're stupid.
Yeah, they could easily like take over if they wanted, kind of.
Yeah, well, if they could get organized enough. And the thing, and I think it's like probably half of the reason that the Adeptus Assassinorum exists is because, like, you don't want one orc getting really powerful. If you have a big enough and strong enough orc who can lead all of the orcs, you're in big trouble, because the more orcs he can lead, the more damage they will do. And legitimately, if they get organized, they can take over the galaxy.
Yeah.
So you want to avoid that.
Yes, please. Okay.
It's essentially oh, and interestingly, because Horus, the Primarch.
Yeah. No problems there.
No problems there. He attacked what was it? I think it was called Goro. It was a planet that was ruled by or like a part of the Orcs. There's a few Orc inverted commas empires. Not really, but kind of like rough areas where the Orcs kind of dominate in the galaxy.
They hang.
And this was one of them. Because there were so many mech boys, and the mech boys were basically the rulers on Goro. They got a bit obsessed with a few different technologies, and especially plasma. So they were making they were making some very dangerous plasma weaponry in that area. And it had essentially been like really slowing down the Great Crusade. The weaponry they're producing is just like a bit too strong, and plasma guns and stuff. Great way of dealing with Space Marines.
Okay.
So the Emperor was like, all right, let's fuck this planet up and destroy it. So Horus was like, yes, sir. And because, he's the most loyal and bestest boy of the Emperor.
Yep.
Like he went with the Emperor to Goro, and like thousands of ships turned up, lots of space Marines going to the planet and bombarding and space battles and all that type of thing. I believe not only the Emperor, but also Horus charged in at the front as well, along with, and I hate that I'm going to have to say this because, of what's going to happen next, the Custodians.
I can refrain if you need me to refrain.
We'll talk about the Custodians when we talk about the Emperor. Essentially, they're like super Space Marines. They're like They're like the Emperor's personal guard. Basically.
Okay.
They're really cool. They're really powerful, and I can't wait to talk about them. But we're not talking about them now because we'll go on for another 3 hours just on the Custodians.
Next time.
I think they're called the Legion Custodes, something like that. They're much like the Sisters of Battle or the Imperial Guard. They're their own faction, like sub within the Imperium.
Right.
So there's a lot to talk about for them.
So hold off asking questions, please.
It's enough to know that they're like super Space Marines, or they're like they're like the Emperor's personal guard almost.
Yeah. Okay.
So the fight was tough. The Orcs there had been there for quite a long time. Just kind of like fighting each other when they wanted to and getting stronger. There's also a shit ton of bionics.
Ooh.
And some of the Orcs were bigger than dreadnoughts.
Oh.
Yeah. At some point, the Emperor got surrounded by himself. He killed a shit ton of like hundreds of them because he's the Emperor. I wouldn't say he almost died, but he got pretty close to almost dying, I guess. Horus turned up and saved him, and then they kind of fought their way out. This this fight, it's essentially they kind of destroyed the world. I think they actually folded the world into the warp.
It's not very nice.
But so I think that they found something like a warp, like a generator or some kind of like orc technology that was running, and they kind of like said it's self-destruct. And when it self-destructed,
it went into the warp.
It like imploded instead of exploded, and the planet kind of like got folded into the warp.
Okay.
Possibly.
Possibly.
But essentially that dealt with Goro, which was the place making all the awesome weaponry that was giving Space Marines a hard time. And that pretty much like spelled the end of the danger, I guess. From that regards.
Poor orcs, they try and settle down.
Well, it's like, yes, poor orcs, but also the orcs probably really enjoyed it for the most part.
Yeah. Because they've been created that way.
Yeah. Because it's how they were built. Built different. So there was another I can't remember if I think it was this one. It was called the Ulanor Crusade, which was in an area of space which was like another sector of the galaxy where the orcs were kind of, in power, essentially. And Horus was sent off with the Lunar Wolves to kind of like defeat the warlord, the big boss orc guy. Kind of faced off against the guy and killed him. So, yay, Horus. He does good work for the Imperium.
Until he didn't.
And pretty much like it like there's obviously more detail to it, but the essentials of it is that Horus killed the big boss of the orcs in the sector, and that kind of broke their cohesion, and they kind of fell apart a little bit. And off the back of that, I believe, was when Horus was promoted to War Master. So his like essentially his extensive work against the orcs led to him being made War Master and all that type of thing.
All well and good for some people.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you may notice a trend, and it's a trend in all of 40k, whereby we tell the story of what happened to the orcs through the Imperium. You're not talking about very, very, very often, especially in the older like stories. If you have a story, if there's like a story to be told about the Eldar, it will be through a Space Marine or an Imperial Guard regiment, or some Imperial character who witnessed it or was involved in it.
Never first person.
Yeah, like more and more they're doing stories from Xenos perspectives. The Infinite and the Divine is a great example. It's fucking brilliant, and I hope they do more like that. There is an orc story, which is in this one instance, maybe chat can help me out with this one. It's like greener and tougher, or something along those lines. See if I can find it very quickly. Brutal Cunning is one of the more recent ones, I think, and apparently it's really good. And and the voice acting is really good as well, which is always important. I
In
found.
audiobooks.
Yeah. So essentially, during this time, like the Great Crusade, was when the Imperium decided to deal with the Orcs. Like there was a big crusade, there was a big war and campaign against the Orcs to kind of like knock them down. Because, you know, before the Imperium kind of like pushed out, I think a lot of the time, you know, the Orcs were just too much bother to deal with at all.
Yeah, just leave them to it. They'll fight themselves.
Yeah, and like the Eldar and you know, anyone else about is just kind of like, we got our own problems, you know. Let's don't worry about that so much.
Turning into rocks, like.
Yeah,
I'm so busy.
so busy turning into rocks and trying not to have our souls eaten. I think past that, probably the next thing to touch on is a few of the fun orc characters.
Yeah, I love when we get into like main characters.
Yeah. So one of the really fun ones is Tusca.
I have his skin color.
Oh, you do? Yeah. So Tusca, who also calls himself Tusca the Demon Killer,
right?
Was the head of a orc war, like big boss, orc warlord. Used to like gathering trophies, you know, like he'd go and fight something bigger and larger than him, and kind of get a good fight in and then kill it and destroy it and then take some trophy, like slap it on himself.
Yeah.
There was a point where he was like cruising around in his big ship, his like flagship, and the ship, while he was going through the warp, was like essentially infiltrated by a demon.
Okay, I was going to ask about. We need to rewind because when they drive, is this all the time? They just. How do they accidentally go to the warp? Because obviously,
I'm pretty sure orc ships can go through the warp.
Well, because when we talk about the Imperium, I know you have to have like navigator and everything to get through the warp. And if orcs can just like they just go with the red button, for instance.
Yeah.
How does that accidentally put them in the warp? Or on purpose put them in the warp?
Well, I think they use looted warp drives, and like, you know, the knowledge of technology inherent in some of their orcs lets them, you know,
pop through.
Essentially, I would say very likely they don't have as much they don't have as much defenses and precautions, you know, like, so things go a lot worse for them in the warp, but they don't mind as much because if you get demons on your ship, then you get something fun to fight. Yeah, that really is it. So when this demon invaded or infiltrated his ship, some of the orcs were talking about this like giant multi-headed like abomination of like flesh and killing and all that type of thing. He's like, cool. Okay, brilliant, let's go. He got his power claw, he charged in and went like charged into the bridge of his ship, like bust through and just like just started wailing on the demon. By the like, and he kind of just like him and the demon pretty much destroyed the bridge almost completely in the fight. When they were done, Tusca took the demon's horns and chucked them on his trophy rack, and he's like, yo, what up? I killed the demon. So he once he had that fight, he was like, you know what? Humans are kind of fucking lame. He basically ran around the sector of space he was in and pretty much like shanghaied a whole load of weird boys. We'll get to weird boys in a little bit.
Thanks.
But, no problem. Weird boys are essentially orc psychers. They work a little differently, and they're not really like warp psychers, but calling them psychers is the best way.
Okay.
For now. And so he got all of these weird boys together so that he could get past the Imperial defenses in Cadia, like in and around Cadia, so he could charge into the Eye of Terror.
Oh, okay.
So he took his boys and they charged past the Imperium to go into the Eye of Terror so they could find more demons to fight.
Oh, good.
So they charged into the Eye of Terror.
Oh,
they
God.
charged into the warp, the Immaterium, and while they're fighting, like there's death, there's destruction, there's just absolute mania and all of these things. Who do you think was like, what's this over here? This looks interesting.
One of the
think about what's in the warp and who's there, and
yeah, I'm thinking about our chaosy friends.
Yeah, like who, like a shit ton of orcs charge into your backyard and start like fighting everything. Who do you think's gonna be like, "Ooh, hello"?
Corn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! So he turns up near Terror.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, no. So basically, Tusca had already like invaded and crumped on a whole load of crumped, by the way, is like the orc word for destroy or fight or kick the arse of, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
If you go crumping, you basically go into a fight. And he'd crumped quite a few demon worlds belonging to like Sladesh and Zinch and Nurgle, like all the other ones. And he eventually crashed on a planet which was like owned or presided over by a core knight demon prince called the Blood Prince.
That's so dramatic, honestly.
So obviously Tusca's like, okay, cool, someone big to fight, awesome. And he just charged in with his boys and started fighting the demonic hordes on the planet, started fighting the demon prince. Loads of his boys got killed. Tusca's getting like stabbed and shot and set on fire and all this type of stuff. And like he Tusca got close to dying on this one until the weird boys like shot some warg at him, some psychic power.
Some psychic power to sort him out.
And like that distraction was enough so that Tusca essentially so like demons don't necessarily have human like standard human appendages and stuff.
Yeah.
Essentially, Tusca shoved his power claw in the demon's groin.
Okay.
And then ripped it apart through that. And then died.
Oh, and he died.
Yeah, Tusca died.
Oh.
So the war boss and essentially all of his boys who came with him to invade the Eye of Terror ended up dying.
Yeah. But he killed a big old demon with him.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is like, you know, the demons don't die a lot of the time. They just kind of get banished or they just disappear for a bit before they come back. However, Khorne had so much fun watching it that he resurrected them all and made all the orcs come back the next day.
Aww.
So when the orcs came back, Tusca was like, "Yeah, war," and they just charged straight back into battle and started fighting the demons again.
Of course they did. And I bet they had a great time.
Yeah, they loved it. And the funny thing is that they never like surrendered, they never got upset, they were never like, oh my god, this is torture. They just enjoyed themselves more and more and more as they kept fighting these like Khorne demons, and they'd like die every day, and Khorne would bring them back every day, and then they'd charge in again with no hesitation. And Khorne was like, oh my god, these guys are awesome.
These are my favorites.
And he'd bring in like his most powerful generals and his most powerful like demons and all of this type of thing, like see which ones could win and which ones would lose. And then of course when orcs die, they release like fungal spores, which like spawn more orcs, more greenskins. So not only were the orcs like coming back and dying and stuff like that, but they essentially like claimed a section of like Khorne's domain through their fungal spores, which means even more orcs are being born as other orcs are being brought back by Khorne to fight again, and now there are more orcs.
Is Khorne not concerned about this? Doesn't care, or
no? He like all it means is that there are more orcs to fight, so he could fight like his demons could fight more orcs and
train.
Essentially, since when was it? He went in there like a few hundred years ago, I think, in terms of like regular imperial imperial times. Since then, every day in Khorne's domain, Tusca and his orcs are brought back, and every day they charge into battle and fight demons, and that's been going on for a few hundred years or something.
Good for them.
And yeah, everyone's happy. It's one of those stories, and it's the reason I love Tusca, because if it was like an imperial, like a space marine or an imperial guardsman or something along those lines, they'd be so miserable and so unhappy and so tortured. But Tusca's just like, fuck yeah, this is literally Ork Halla, like Valhalla is just it's his perfect eternity. And Khorne's happy because he actually has eternal war.
That's true.
It literally, they all lived happily ever after.
I mean, it's bad for the rest of the universe because his demons are getting trained up by orcs. So,
and the orcs are just like getting bigger and stronger, and
like one day that's gonna just not work out for a lot of people.
But everyone lives happily ever after in that story.
The orcs do,
yeah. But yeah, that's Tusca. It's quite a simple story, but it's one of my favorites because like if you know a little bit about the orcs, you can just predict it. You're like, oh, so they charge in and
have a nice little fight.
I love the fact that Khorne was so impressed with how much they enjoy fighting like him. He's just like, yeah, screw it. We're bringing him back.
Fight again. Let's go.
Even more fighting. So, okay. So I would say most likely the next. So would you like to go into another orc character, or would you prefer to kind of go more into the details of the orcs?
Is it a short character? Because I'm like, I do want to
No,
know.
the other characters we'd go into would be a lot more.
Mm, mm, tell me about a character.
Okay. So I'm about to be like, have you ever heard the story of Gazgul Mag Uruk Thraka?
No.
You know a little bit about him. He's the one who had his head cut off.
Yeah. It's sewn back on.
Yeah. We won't go like super deep into him. I'll try and keep it like because we could probably
talk for a while.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Gazgul is there's a lot about him. He's kind of the main character of the Orcs. I'd say he's close to the Emperor in terms of importance.
Oh, that's a bit cheeky.
Like for the Orcs, though.
Okay.
And he's a goth, which once we talk about the clans, we'll go into which those different ones are.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a lot of fights, like to the point where he's like completely crumped on demons, Eldar, even Necrons.
Wow.
Yeah. His biggest fights have always been against the Imperium.
Yeah.
And much more specifically, he was the one leading the second and third war in Armageddon.
Okay. Know about that a little bit.
Yeah, you were there.
Well, in alt universe.
Yeah, alternate universe, sure. Not canon at all.
It wasn't sensible, and it was just nonsensical. So
it really was. I mean, there were Necrons there. There aren't Necrons on Armageddon
that you know of.
Well, not yet, anyway.
Third war for Armageddon, unless there's already been a third one.
So we haven't really talked about the Orcish religion. Essentially, very simply, Orc religion is there's two gods. There's Gork and Mork. The joke is that Gork, I think Gork is brutally cunning, and Mork is cunningly brutal, and that's the difference between them.
Right.
Usually Orcs will be like, I like Gork, or I like Mork. You know, they have a favorite, and you know that one tends to look favorably on them, you know, all that type of thing.
Okay.
Gazgul is seen as the prophet of Gork and Mork.
Both of them.
He's currently probably the biggest threat in terms of Orcs.
Uh-huh.
He has a massive war. He's running all over the place, crumping on shit. And yeah, he's just a big problem.
Living his best life.
You know. So Gazgul came to prominence in quite an interesting way. Essentially, he was kind of, as I remember, he was out in kind of like a small nowhere orc place.
Right.
You know, just a random planet that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
And it had orcs on it. That was pretty much it. At some point, it like the Imperium founded a planet, like put colonists on it and stuff like that. And after a while, there was like an actual Imperial planet there, you know, like lots of Imperium citizens and everything. In the end, the Orcs, who were kind of like a small little group of Orcs not really doing much, were like, yo, shit to fight, and just kind of charged in and started fighting.
That's immediately what I thought when they said they had a little settlement. I'm like, yay, they have friends to fight now.
Yeah, they essentially ripped apart the entirety of the Imperial world,
Mm-hmm.
turned it into a really shitty fleet of ships, and flew off into space.
Off we go on an adventure.
And obviously, you know, the planet still things there.
Yeah, we're just gonna move on from that, shall we?
Yeah. The group, this group of orcs kind of like ran around. They encountered xenos of different types, and you know, it is what it is. This was like a long time ago. So this was before the Emperor.
Oh, so it
Yeah.
was not Imperium then, right?
No, sorry, that was well, I mean, it was humanity.
Humans.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Clarification.
Later on, the Great Crusade came along and found that planet.
Oops.
Um, I think it was the Dark Angels like turned up and like cleansed the planet of anything that was, you know, a problem to them, which is pretty much anything Xenos. And yeah, for a couple thousand years, they this time the actual Imperium, you know, set up hive cities, mining, spaceports, all that type of thing. Unfortunately, a giant war swept through the area, attacked the planet.
Yep.
And kind of fucked it up. And then the entire planet, the entire system, but the planet specifically, was just covered in orcs again. If you read the if you ever read the Divine and the Infinite,
Mm-hmm.
because the Necrons live so long and are so like, you know, there all the time,
Yeah.
you can see this happening through the eyes of someone who's there and like observing it. It's essentially Trazen keeps going. Trazen and Oricon keep going back to the same planet, and every time they go back, there's either orcs or Imperial there, and it keeps swapping.
He's trading.
Over,
Aw.
yeah, it's over like thousands and thousands of years, and it keeps changing.
Let's go and see what we'll find on this planet today.
Yeah. So, like, this stuff is kind of the lead up to Gazgul. Essentially, it kept switching, and then like there was a warp storm, and it got cut off, and the orcs started fighting each other, and then they destroyed the humans. The humans ran away. You know, all these type of things happened. At some point, the warp storm kind of dissipates a little bit, and they're like, oh, look at this planet with all these orcs. It's quite a big fight, because none of the kind of like warlords in charge of different green orc things, there wasn't one that like stood to prominence. So there are lots of different factions of orcs fighting each other, and you know, more orcs get drawn in because there's a fight. And in general, what happens to form a war is a planet will just be a big fight between orcs until one of them like stands up and goes, I'm taking over this planet, takes over the planet. More orcs keep coming in, and then they just go off on a fucking like crusade to fight, you know, a war.
Ooh.
If the Imperium finds that happening,
Yeah,
they will very often try to either assassinate or kill a rising orc warlord because it will stop a war.
Yeah. That makes... Oops. Model just decided to have a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want, as you say, they don't want one becoming really powerful or massive and gotta cut it off before then.
So one of the things that the Dark Angels had done is they'd set up a essentially a what's it called, monitoring station, pretty much.
Okay.
So that they could keep track of the orc populations in the area and see if there were any orc, like any orcs kind of going like, oh, oh, that one over there is starting to take over the planet. They could send in like a strike team to take him out, or assassins or whatever. At some point, the monitoring station was attacked.
Yeah, of course it was. They're an orc planet.
Yeah, like the orcs essentially were just like, okay, fucking let's attack this. They discovered the base. They decided to attack it. They wanted to strip it for parts, and the defense systems kicked in. When they were charging, Gazgul got hit in the head with a bolter shell. It mangled up his brain. It like crushed a significant portion of his head.
Oh.
And essentially it's a possibility that he could have died if he was another orc. What happened actually is Gazgul got up and started running around again because orcs, because of course.
Yep.
He was also a goth. Well, he is also a goth, so that has a lot. Like goths are pretty tough.
Okay, I mean, yeah. They wear black all the time. I nearly dipped my paintbrush in the black paint then by accident because I was talking about it. Yeah.
There was also a pain boy for the Death Skulls, like a mad doc, basically.
Right.
He basically on his own volition stumbled into the let's call it operating room for sake of argument of the pain boy, with like his brains like flying out of his head and is like in his hands and shit. And someone called Mad Doc Grotznick, who is another character we could talk about, but we won't because this will take years and years and years. Essentially got to work on Gazgul. Essentially, the Mad Doc operated on him, put bionics in him. I think he put a posh, like he essentially wired up his brain with like different bionics and parts of Squigs.
Parts of Squigs?
And yeah, like the muscle of Squigs to kind of like hold it together. And like bits of metal and stuff.
Okay.
And then like riveted his head back together with like big metal plates.
Yeah.
And then when he woke up, Gazgul, when he woke up, he had a vision that it was his like Gork and Mork given right to rally the entirety of Ork, like all orcs around the entire galaxy, and lead them on a massive war to claim the entire galaxy.
Oh. Bad news for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, he essentially after that, he immediately, so because it was a Death Skull Mad Dog,
Mhm.
Mad Dog Grotznik. He'd kind of wandered into a Death Skulls camp. He was a goth. Um, so Gazgul, like, once he was fixed up and he was, kind of working a bit more, and he decided that he was a prophet of the entire greenskins. Um, he went immediately to the boss of the Death Skulls in the area,
Uh-huh.
like kicked down the door,
Uh-huh.
and was like, "Yo!" And the boss, the Death Skulls boss, I think his name was Dregmek, was like, he like had this big combi weapon. It's basically orcs take a gun, glue it to another gun, glue 10 more guns onto it, and just hit the trigger and hope that it fires. That's a combi weapon.
Cool.
Sometimes like the one the gun that you have, which is like it's got a belt fed automatic rifle and also a flamethrower.
Yes.
It's like that.
I don't see anything wrong with that. It's in
No, I mean,
aliens.
yeah, sometimes sometimes the combi weapons will do things like fire at the same time.
Right.
So the flamethrower fires, and then the bullets get set on fire as they go through the flame.
I think that's a good idea. And
It's
orcs
kind of
can do
cool.
what
Yeah,
they want,
yeah,
so
they can do whatever.
oopsie doopsie.
Um, essentially, when he's kind of pointing this ridiculous gun at Gazgol, being like, "What the fuck are you doing?" All of the Dragmech's like officers, knobs, were like, "Let's see what goes on here."
Yeah.
Um, Gazgol just kind of walked forward at him, and he was like, "Okay, yeah, fucking goths trying to charge into close combat, bang, 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 daka, daka." And he just fired like I think there were about 6-barreled. It was just like a 6-barreled combi weapon, just all kind of full of Dakar. Um, every single bullet missed him.
Ooh.
Like it hit things behind him. It hit like barrels that exploded and shit like that. But Gazgul just kept walking forwards through like a blaze of gunfire.
Because he's a badass.
Yeah. Um, until the gun ran out of the gun ran out of ammunition, and Gazgul walked straight up to him and beat the living shit out of him. Quite literally just pummeling him.
Oh.
So strong and so vicious that all of the boss's like officers started enjoying themselves and cheering him on.
Yeah, I mean they respect the strong one, right? So
he then headbutted him
with his metal plates.
with his metal plate, like he's basically has an
Oh.
armored head. And yeah, just finished him off with a headbutt. He then looked around at all of the orcs who were kind of chilling there and was like, I'm the prophet of Gorkabork. Follow me, let's go. Wandered off, and everyone followed him.
Yeah, they did. Oh.
And then he kind of like gathered up all of the orcs in the nearby vicinity and was like, "Yo, what's up? If any of you want to try and take my place, like if any of you want to try and challenge me, you can, one at a time or all of you. I don't care."
It's like, go for it. Boss move.
uh, I mean, you say to an orc, if you want to attack me, feel free, then they're going to attack you. So essentially, after like an hour or so, he pretty much had claimed leadership. And he was like, "Yay, I'm in charge.
Of course he's in charge. He's the meanest, strongest orc around.
Yes. So that's like the origin part of Ghazghkull. There's a lot more to his story leading up to Armageddon.
Okay.
And it's like this would be probably at least a couple of like podcasty episodes just talking about all of Ghazgkull's story and things.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll go to technically it's the second war for Armageddon. It's actually the first one with orcs. Additionally, I think we should actually do like a proper thing on the Armageddon wars because they're awesome.
And I could actually know what happened rather than what happened in our
what happened in chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, Ghazghkull and his war. This is quite a bit later. He's a known name to the Imperium even. But he came out of nowhere in the second war. The first war for Armageddon was chaos and like demons and stuff. Like generally, planetary defense of an imperial planet is ready for raiders and things like that at best.
Yeah, it's just easy, like so we don't have to deal with the minuscule problems.
Like they can even deal with orcs when they're like a raiding party or just a random small, when it's a war, it's just like a swarm. It's like Tyranids almost, they just swarm.
Yeah.
Also, Ghazghkull, compared to a lot of other orcs, was quite clever and cunning and tactical.
He has a brain.
He would hit the right places to kind of shut down defenses and things like that.
Oh, okay.
He would like send assaults on defensive positions to force them into a stand-up fight and then use his vehicles and stuff to surround them to cut off supply lines.
Oh, tactics.
And then, once they've surrounded them, they'd start bombarding them with artillery. And then, they'd have defensive lines to stop any attempts to breaking out. And then they'd just charge in and destroy them.
Yeah. Proper fight. Proper scrum him.
This type of thing was happening over Armageddon. They were taking over hive cities, they were taking over fortresses, they were, there was massive titans battling it out and all this type of thing. Armageddon essentially was gonna be destroyed and be taken over, and just all the humans would be killed. I believe there was some blood angels around, some space marines helping, but when you have enough orcs, it doesn't matter if you have some space marines. Whatever. However, and also just FYI, orcs in general quite admire space marines because they're quite strong and more kind of battle hardened and etc.
Admire them enough to fight them again. We want to fight those.
Yeah, the most probably the most respected warrior in the Imperium by the orcs is called Commissar Yarrick.
I know of Yarrick.
Yarrick is one of my all-time favorite characters in fiction, non-stop, full stop.
Wow.
I love Yarrick, and a lot of 40k fans like Yarrick.
Yeah.
So I'm going with the crowd on this one, but he's awesome.
Okay, well.
Uh, essentially, Commissar Yarrick, and you know commissars basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're part of the Imperium. They kind of maintain discipline and very often shoot their own troops when they don't do it.
Boss man. Yeah.
Memes, but you know.
But true.
Yeah. Uh, there was a point during the War for Armageddon where the Orcs had mostly guaranteed victory. There was one hive that was proving to be a little bit of trouble. It was called the Hades Hive.
I'm just like, why would you, if I was born in a Hades Hive on the planet of Armageddon, like, no, I think I'm gonna move.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'll just go.
Well, no, sorry. So essentially, Yarrick ended up in the Hades Hive when I think he was positioned positioned there, or I think he had some complaints, or there was something that he did that got him sent there as kind of like a get this person out of the way. And during the Second War for Armageddon, as all of the hives are getting like cut off and like sieged and in trouble, the Hades Hive had a pretty bad time of it because it was being attacked by one of Gazgul's like lieutenants, an Orc warlord called Ugelhard. During the first like proper fight, like where they kind of tried to take the hive, Yarrick was in charge of the defenses to a certain degree. Ugelhard actually like charged in to fight Yarrick and cut off his arm, like severed his right arm kind of around the elbow with like a big power claw, just like when that happened, Yarrick was like, fuck you, and cut his head off with his sword.
Yeah, as his arm was getting chopped off.
Well, so essentially, Yarrick's arm cut off. He like falls over. He's like bleeding and etc. And the Orc warlord was like, "Yay, I won!" And Yarrick's like, "Nah, bitch, you didn't," and then cut his head off. And then basically took the power claw that cut his arm off, raised it above his head, and like let out this massive battle bellow, essentially.
Ooh.
Which not only made the Orcs scared because he literally just killed their strongest Orc, and he's now like, look, I have a trophy of the little bitch I just killed. Also, all the Imperial defenders under his command were so inspired that they charged the Orcs.
Yeah. It's going so well for him, apart from, the arm thing.
Yarrick kept leading the attack on the Orcs until they were like chased out of the hive. until the last Orc was pushed out, Yarrick didn't let himself pass out. He essentially kept leading the attack until they got rid of them and then passed out.
And now I can have some healing, please.
Because of this, Yarrick essentially became a figure of like great fear for the Orcs. Like the Orcs gossiped about this incident to the point where if Yarrick was in the fight, Orcs would run away.
Oh.
So how like Yarrick had some experience now fighting orcs and knew how they operated and stuff. Like he just had his arm cut off. They're scared of him. What do you think he did?
He's going chasing after orcs.
But before he does that,
He attaches the power claw
to his arm.
to his arm. Hell yeah.
What one of the like one of the rumors that the orcs had about Yarrick is that he could kill them just by looking at them. Like if Yarrick looked at them, and like if an orc was seen by him, the orc would drop dead instantly.
Oh,
from,
but they
like,
believe
fear
it.
So because like Yarrick heard this rumor and knew that the orcs had this like theory about him or like a fear of him because of his evil eye, he went to a doctor and got a pulse laser implant into one of his eyes, essentially replaced one of his eyeballs with a eyeball that fires lasers at close range. So now when Yarrick looks at someone, he can like trigger the laser eye and it will just kill them by like firing a laser into them.
That is so effective. Sorry, it's delicate teeth. That's so good. And then he could definitely play up the rumors and just orcs believing and they'll die.
Yes. Upon hearing, not upon hearing this, essentially for the next 6 months, Yarrick was pretty much solely responsible for holding the defense together and stopping it from being taken over. There were multiple times orcs got into the Hades Hive and were like running around and fucking killing people, and every single time Yarrick fought them off.
Yarrick turns up. Oh, bless him.
And like not only did he terrify the orcs, but all of the Imperial like soldiers and everyone was like inspired and led by him.
Yeah.
There were points where the Imperials were more terrified of him than of the orcs.
Yeah, well, you can't turn around and run away from battle.
Yeah, he literally just led them by strength of his own will, pretty much. You know, so like we're talking about someone who got his arm cut off and then
carried
like
on.
not only carried on and killed the big orc warlord who cut his arm off, also led a fight for another couple of hours before passing out.
What a champ. But he doesn't get any credit from Mr. Emperor Man.
He was so effective in defense compared to all of the other hives that not only did it tie up a lot of the orc forces trying to take the Hades Hive, because Ghazghkull kept sending more forces to take the hive because it was supposed to be taken like 6 months ago. It got to the point where Ghazghkull got so pissed off he went over there himself.
Oh, hello.
There was a point where they had a fight together and neither could like get a, you know,
killing blow
or anything like that. Ghazghkull was so distracted by the Hades Hive and also Commissar Yarrick that it gave enough time for a force of Imperial Guard and Space Marines to turn up and launch counterattack.
Yeah, it did.
I think there was like anywhere from like 10 to a couple of hundred survivors in the Hades Hive by the time it got relieved.
Wow.
And we're talking like originally it would be like millions in each hive.
Yeah. Wow. And they held it together.
Yeah, Yarrick was one of them. He did survive.
Of course he did. Can't be dying after all of that.
Yeah. He for his outstanding bravery, he was actually offered retirement, which never happens in the Imperial Guard, just FYI. And he was basically like, they were like, you're so awesome, you don't need to go out fighting and, you know, like carrying out your usual duties. How about you train people on Armageddon, like our Imperial forces on Armageddon? And he's like, yeah, bet. Okay, cool. So he did that for like a little while, a few months, etc.
Months.
But he was like, yeah, no, I like Ghazghkull's out there. I need to deal with him.
Yeah, need to go kill an orc.
Yeah. He kind of
came out of retirement to go back out.
Then he essentially went tracking to track down Ghazghkull. And like for about 10 years, Ghazghkull ran away from him.
Never mind. I'm just gonna go this way.
Essentially, Yarrick led a massive force against Ghazghkull, and Ghazghkull had recently lost the majority of his war because, you know, obviously the war for Armageddon wasn't great for Ghazghkull. He eventually got like kicked off the planet, and most of his forces were routed or killed.
Surprised he still has a war.
Eventually, tracked him down to a planet, forced him into a fight, and was like, "Hey, Yarrick is gonna kick his ass because, you know, he's been running away." Turns out it was a trap.
Orcs set a trap?
Yeah, Ghazghkull is a crafty little bastard, or giant bastard, as the case may be.
Oh my goodness.
The second that Ghazghkull like stopped and fought, another like group of orcs basically hit Yarrick's forces from behind. Basically like hanging around waiting for the chance to ambush them. And then at the same time, a giant fucking orc ship like kind of appeared from where I was hiding behind a moon and like started engaging and chasing away the navy. So essentially the majority of the Imperial forces were destroyed, and the Commissar Yarrick was captured.
Oh.
They took away his claw and his eye.
No.
They chained him in a pit. And then dropped him into what I think was a mine.
Okay.
Essentially, orcs, like all the other races, they, you know, use the other races for like slavery and like, mining and all that type of thing. And so Yarrick kind of like ran around doing stuff. I don't know whether he was No, that's right. Sorry. First, they dropped him into into like a rubbish pile, which was filled with squigs who like eat everything.
Oh.
When he got dropped in there, he hunted down all the squigs, killed them, used all of their horns and stuff that they had on them to make a step ladder to get back up the waste chute.
Oh,
took him like a week.
A week? Okay.
Yeah. Like when he got back up, yeah, I know. Like when he got back up, Ghazghkull was there waiting for him. Like he was like, the Ghazghkull was literally like, "This is just for fun. You're not gonna die. I don't, you know." He didn't believe he was gonna die. And then he was like, "Okay, and now throw Yarrick in among the slaves." So he threw Yarrick in with all the other like human slave prisoner people on the ship. That's
not a good idea for Ghazghkull.
Well, you know, So immediately, Yarrick organized a revolt among the slaves.
Yep, there it is.
They led an uprising against the Orcs.
Yep.
Killed a whole load of guards, took their guns, took their weapons like axes and shit. And essentially headed for where they thought Ghazghkull was. Ghazghkull was there. There's a lot of running and fighting and things like that. Unfortunately, they didn't know that they were on a ship.
Oh.
So as they're like trying to fight their way out, Yarrick eventually, they found out that they're on a ship. They're like, we can't really escape. So I think they tried to blow something up. They tried to like self-detonate the ship. Basically trying to make it self-destruct. It didn't quite work. Like part of the ship was destroyed. And then Orcs, turned up and Yarrick got exploded but survived. When he woke up later, like it's kind of, you wake up a few days later, you're still alive. You're like, oh my God, I'm still alive. Not only was he still alive, he'd been given his power claw and his bear eye back.
Why?
When he left the room that he was sleeping in, all of the Orcs started cheering and like respectfully parted like a path for him.
Okay.
And the Orcs escorted him to Ghazghkull.
Oh.
And Yarrick was like, okay, so Ghazghkull just wants to fight me himself. When he got to Ghazghkull, Ghazghkull like moved out of the way where he saw a shuttle.
What?
And Ghazghkull said that it had been a great fight, but Yarrick should go back to Armageddon because Ghazghkull's going to attack it again.
Okay.
Ghazghkull basically said to Yarrick was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
And some of the Orcs were surprised as well that he let Yarrick go. And he said that when they like asked why he let him go because he's such a dangerous enemy, Ghazghkull said, "Good enemies are hard to find."
Oh, that's true.
Basically say that he didn't want Yarrick to die because he wanted to fight him some more.
Yeah.
Yarrick left in the shuttle. And then came back with a force of Adeptus Mechanicus and a giant weapon that like fucked up the Orcs on the planet.
Oh, oops.
And Ghazghkull ran away.
He ran. Oh my God. Ghazghkull's such a shit.
Yeah. Then we kind of go off into the third war for Armageddon, where Ghazghkull came back again.
For his
it was an
promised
even
fight.
Yeah. It was an even harder battle for Yarrick. Than the second war.
Yeah,
Eventually, Ghazghkull got chased off again.
Ghazghkull.
Since then, basically, he's kind of been rolling on. He got his head cut off. I don't think it was during the third war for Armageddon. I think it was a little bit later.
Yarrick or Ghazghkull?
Ghazghkull.
But he was okay.
Yarrick?
Ghazghkull.
Yeah, so essentially I can't remember when it was. He was fighting someone. I think it may have. Was it the Tyranids?
We love a Tyranid fight.
I think it was one. I can't remember what the name of the Tyranid unit is, but it's like a big underground unit, and it came out of nowhere. Did it bite his body off?
That could happen.
Sorry, there's a lot for Gazgul. No, that's right. Okay, so it was. Oh, of course it was. I should have guessed this. It was a space wolf.
Oh, of course it was.
I think it may have been the chapter master for the space wolves.
Bloody space wolves.
Yeah, cut his head off. And then a Gretchen found Gazgul's head later on, took it to Mad Dog Grotsnick, who is kind of part of Gazgul's retinue now. And Mad Dog Grotsnick found like a bigger orc body and reattached it, and now he's running around on a big, like his head is on a bigger orc body.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it. It's fine.
That's the basics of that's the basics of Gazgul. Like we can go much deeper into it, to be honest, but that's the cliff notes, and it also lets us talk a little bit about Commissar Yarrick, who I love. You can see why, right?
Yeah,
like
cool.
he's so fucking cool, and Gazgul's cool too, because he's like, man, he also loves Yarrick, you know.
He was there, so
yeah. So I think we're about ready to take a break.
It is. That is break time.
Let me, before we go to break.
Okay.
Just this is a quote from a Inquisitor, Imperial Inquisitor, obviously, which it just kind of sums up the approach the Imperium often has to orcs, which is, I attempted to exterminate one of their ramshackle armies before and consider it my greatest lapse in judgment. Since then, whenever I encounter their green taint upon a world, I simply destroy the planet.
I mean, it's easier. One way to do it.
Yeah, it's literally just like, fuck it, it's too difficult to beat them, let's just destroy the planet instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a fun little bit to finish on.
Okay. See you next time.
See you next time.